Hi, everyone. This is Michael from CloudApper. It's about 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We're just waiting for some other folks to join, just giving another minute or two just to leave some time for some late joiners to join the session. So we'll get started here shortly. All right. It is 1 minute past the hour. So we will go ahead and get started here. Let me come off video here temporarily, at least, just to let everybody know that I am not an AI robot. Here we go. We'll do the face test there. Um, Great to be here with everyone. We're really thrilled to have all of you join us today for the session. So my name is Michael Trader. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at CloudApper, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Tyler Mitchell and Josh Nelson. They're experts on our hrPad solution from our business development team. We know everybody's time is valuable, so we'll keep the slide deck light, just 10 minutes or so of conversation about our hrPad solution before we jump into the demo, which is really where the magic happens. So before we dive in here, just a quick note on housekeeping. All microphones will remain muted during the presentation to ensure everyone can hear clearly. If you have questions during the session, feel free to drop them in the Zoom Q&A. Our team's going to be monitoring those as we go along. And then we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, and we'll answer any additional questions that you have, or you could submit questions at that time as well. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in here.
So, Mike, to kick this off, what inspired CloudApper to build hrPad?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. So we've been in the WFM space, workforce management space, for many years, and honestly, we just kept seeing the same challenge over and over again. So customers really needed more flexibility in how they capture time and manage employee self-service, something that could, adapt to their unique environments without any major effort. And that's where we saw the opportunity with hrPad. So we created a solution that runs on standard off-the-shelf devices and then also has the flexibility to adapt to specific customer needs.
Exactly. It's that flexibility that comes from the AI layer behind the platform that lets us configure everything. It's from the UI to the logic that to things like policies or multiple languages. It's all without heavy development there. So we can move quickly and adapt as your organization grows and the needs change.
Yeah, that's right. Tyler, your thoughts on just kind of bottom line here? Why should this really matter to the audience?
Well, it matters because you have total flexibility. hrPad can adopt to your organization and not the other way around. And this also means that if there's any development work that comes up, that we can actually implement this quickly without long delays or heavy lift from IT.
And like Tyler mentioned there, flexibility is key. When you don't have it, the cost really starts to stack up every single shift. We often see organizations where 25 to 30% of punches need some kind of correction. And it's not because employees are doing anything wrong necessarily, but because the tools just aren't built for the reality of the front line. And that turns into hundreds of hours of managers' time spent fixing data that should have been captured correctly the first time.
And it's not just the data cleanup, it's what we call the HR on the floor problem. When a system can't conform to business needs, managers end up getting pulled away from their responsibilities just to answer basic policy and schedule questions. Your HCM is already capable of handling these sort of questions, but because your workers don't have access to the info, Your managers end up becoming the human help desk.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you think about like the high stakes side of that kind of inflexibility, and really it comes back to compliance exposure. So if your organization is forced into manual workarounds for things like PTO requests or tracking tasks manually, whatever the case is, attestations can get missed, labor laws aren't enforced consistently, and that lack of agility really is creating this compliance burden that can add up and compound across every location every single day. So, just to be clear to the audience, hrPad is not just a time clock. We think of this as a very flexible employee facing layer that sits right between your human capital management investment and the workers that you want to be more efficient. So whether you're running UKG, Workday, Oracle, SAP, etc., we're not replacing any of those systems. We are activating those for your frontline.
And and the best part for all that is for your IT team. There's no proprietary hardware. So this will run on any iOS, Android, or Windows device you already have. We'll handle the bidirectional sync, so everything happening at the tablet is reflected in your system of record in real time.
When we look at actual features driving this impact, it all starts with smart time capture. We're talking about face recognition, geofencing, and even group punch capabilities for crews. But we go way beyond just punching by offering full employee self-services. So employees can, access the data they need, like submitting PTOs requests, browse open jobs to refer to friends, and of course, attest to compliance questions and more.
And I think the biggest wow factor is that you're not locked into a one size fits all experience. We can make the solution as simple or as robust as you need. If you want a high speed, streamlined, tap to punch experience, we can do that. But if you want a more feature rich HR portal with things like training, attestations, we have that flexibility too. It really just comes down to what you want your workforce to see. And, let's look at a common use case here. So, basic HR self service. The problem today is that frontline workers usually have to reach out to a manager for information your HCM already holds. So, with hrPad, we fix that by moving things like PTO requests and schedule visibility directly to the worker at the kiosk.
Also, just to piggyback off that, we can include this cool AI assistant that can handle those repetitive policy questions 24/7. So your HR team, as they can focus on more strategic work rather than answering what is our policy for overtime 50 times a day. Another big one, though, is compliance. Compliance violations usually accumulate silently until they become very expensive. If you don't have a frontline connection to your HCM, things like attestations at clock out just don't happen reliably.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. And one of the great things about hrPad is that we build those compliance guardrails directly into the actions and the solution, like your punch flow, for example. So we can capture attestations at the actual point of work, not hours or days later. And we can even bake in, any kind of custom policy enforcement, like specific break rules or overtime triggers, so they're applied consistently across every single location. And then finally, we have what we call the HCM agnostic promise, as you can see on the slide here. So hrPad becomes kind of your permanent frontline layer that's designed to outlast any decision that you make regarding your HCM or WFM platforms. So if you're mid-migration, for example, hrPad can actually run on both your old and your new system simultaneously so that your frontline never feels any kind of disruption.
And if you ever switch HCMs in the future, nothing changes for the front line. We'll use the same devices, the same training, the same interface, so that you're not retraining your workforce or replacing hardware anytime you make a back end change. It's just a much cleaner way to future proof that employee experience on the front line.
Well, let's take a look at what customers are actually saying.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. So this is, first of all, hrPad is a very popular solution that we have in our portfolio. We have tons of customers across every industry using it to process literally millions of employee transactions. And what you're looking at here is a great quote from Deb, the chief people officer at a company called Face Amusement. They're in the retail and hospitality space. She told us that missed punches used to be a major issue, and nearly a third of their workforce was affected by it every week. But since they've implemented hrPad, that number's dropped to under 5%. And that's means not just better data, it's fewer headaches as well for managers and a smoother experience for the frontline employees.
That was an amazing drop and great example of how hrPad is driving real operational improvement.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key here, right? It's not just adding features. It's about actually fixing the day-to-day pain points that HR and the workforce experience.
No doubt about that. All right, so we have covered the main challenges that organizations face, how hrPad solves them, and looked at some real world results from that our customers see. So instead of just talking about it, we want to show you hrPad in action. Tyler's actually going to walk us through a live demo so you can see exactly what the experience looks like. So Tyler, let me stop sharing here and I'll kick it over to you.
Perfect, perfect. All right. So everyone, this is a mock-up of our hrPad solution. I want to preface it and say I have this one set up for facial recognition, but we're going to go through quite a few features here in just a second. As we're talking about, we support all the same kind of great employee self-service functions that your employees are using today. So whether they want to come up and just simply, let's say, submit a punch, it can be as easy as them coming up, selecting the tile, and with facial recognition, they don't need any prerequisites. You just identify who the employee is and use the API from your core systems to submit the punch directly over. The same kind of interaction would be with any other type of employee self-service. Let's say your employees wanted to view their accrual balance. It'd be as easy as them coming down, selecting the accrual balance button, the employee authenticating, and then we would just seamlessly inherit that information directly from your core system. So if you see here, like underneath my employee profile, I have like personal vacation, sick and floating holiday. But if you have any other type of accrual balances built out in your core system, we would just seamlessly inherit that through the API. As well as you see that we have the ability to do like job transfers, request PTO, you can view your time card and your schedule, all the typical self-service functions. But everything here is, completely tailorable. So as we were mentioning earlier, we can make this as optimized or as feature rich as you like. Just to kind of pivot into another version real quick to show you how simplified we can actually make it. You'd be quite surprised how many people come up to us and say, we'd like this just to be punch in and out. We have UKG or another system that's really great where they can do some of these other functions from a mobile app that they provide. We absolutely understand that. So if you need, say, something more optimized, it can be as easy as this. But I say we can get quite granular with the way that the workflows and everything work here. So another good one that I'm just talking about is compliance. So for this one, I say you'll see that I have like start shift, end shift, break start, break end. So one of the more important things that we're seeing around compliance, especially at the kiosk stations, is being able to test for like the California like meal break out of station questions. So we actually have this one even configured to handle that today. So if an employee wanted to, come back from break, and I do want to preface it, I have this one set up for our QR code authentication. They would just come up, authenticate real quick, and then you'll see that it just prompts us for the question. So then that way, all this information is reliably going over into your core system. Another neat feature, that we were talking about earlier is that this can be, a kiosk for your front line to come up and interact with, but also for crews and for people in construction. We have this even configured to where you can put this into the hands of like a manager or foreman or crew leader to where they can actually start the activities and transfer your, either individual employees or groups of employees directly into a task that you have predefined. And this information can all come from your core system. This is just a little bit on, how we are able to, cater to all different types of industries. I'm going to just, toggle through a couple of these real quick to kind of show you that what we had there is completely tailorable again. So if we want to add branding, if we want to change the workflows, the way that the buttons look and feel, we can actually take the friction completely off of your front line. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. One other thing before we jump back to the Q&A section, as we talked about, this is a solution that can integrate with really any third-party system. When you think about a traditional time clock, obviously those are really just primarily working with the workforce management system. Um, one I think great example is how this can do things like help with the employee referral process if you have open opportunities across the organization. Do you have a configuration that you can show that touches on that?
Believe I do. Give me 1 second. I do on this one actually. I have job openings. And so with this button right here, I say this can plug into like any ATS. And so we can pull over, I say the open requisitions there. And employees can, share this job with a friend or family member. All they would need to do is authenticate, then come in, type in their friends or family members' phone number, and it'll text them a link to where they can start applying. Also, I do want to put a little plug in here. We have another product called AI Recruiter that helps automate the full hiring experience as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler. That's just, I think, a great example because obviously this data, the open requisitions or job opportunities, is coming from either a core HR system or an applicant tracking system, as you mentioned. So it's just a good example of how to showcase sort of the versatility that this can bring to your frontline staff while driving more value throughout the organization. Behind the scenes with this particular functionality, we can also track which employees referred which candidates to an open job. Most companies have incentive programs in place where they encourage employees to refer friends or family members. And so we can track all of that automatically. That's typically a manual process for companies. We can even take it a step further and process bonus payments directly on that referring employee's next payroll cycle. So again, just wanted to highlight that to kind of reinforce the versatility and flexibility of the solution and how that can translate into much greater value for the organization compared to just a traditional time clock. All right, so back to the deck here and just moving into the Q&A section. So really appreciate the overview again, Tyler. For the audience, we'd love to hear from you. This is the opportunity where you can open, or you can ask any questions. Feel free to drop those directly into the Q&A section of Zoom. If you need to find that, there should be a little menu button on the lower part of your Zoom panel or a button that says Q&A, and feel free to drop any questions there and we can answer them live. Tyler, while the audience is submitting questions, I have a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of hardware is required to run hrPad?
Yeah, absolutely. hrPad can run on any off-the-shelf Android, iOS, or Windows 10 and up device. and you don't need any special hardware whatsoever. I know I get asked a lot, especially from the iPads, do I need a pro device or anything like that? And the answer is no. You just need a standard, as a iPad, nothing fancy whatsoever.
And Josh, can you talk a little bit to the implementation process? What does the typical timeline look like for hrPad once a customer signs?
Yeah, typically we see about a 2 to 3 week turnaround from the time we're able to collect API keys. So we try to make that as seamless of an approach as we can, and it comes down to all the features and bells and whistles you want.
And then just as kind of like an add-on question to that, for either one of you, if you've got a company using hrPad and they add new locations, for example, or want to need to add new devices across their locations, how quickly can they get those set up?
Oh, super easy. All you need to do is go get another device, get the app downloaded and log in, and you're ready to rock and roll.
Awesome. You all know that another question that we get a lot of times is offline capabilities. We work with customers in agriculture and construction, healthcare, where you've got field employees, for example. Can't always guarantee that there's going to be a network signal. So, what happens if the network goes down?
So the beauty about hrPad too is that, this is run on a tablet. So we actually have the ability, let's say, internet connectivity is down, or even, your core system can just be on a maintenance break. We actually have the ability to where we'll cache that information and we'll continue to ping your core system until it's reachable and then automatically reconsolidate all the information for you. You don't need to go back anywhere and click a button or anything to make that information flow over.
Awesome.
And what about whenever the HR system is down for a maintenance break?
Same deal. I say we would just be able to cache that information locally, and we'll continue to try to reach that core system. But as soon as it's back from its maintenance break, we'd automatically, resync that data.
Wonderful.
All
I
right.
did see a question come in just a moment ago, Mike. Someone was asking here about our geofencing capabilities. Tyler, could you tell us about our geofencing capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So with hrPad, I say we can use the longitude and latitude in order to make geo coordinates and then map out, I say, your geofence. It is completely tailorable, I say, on the reach of it. So we can tailor on how strict or how loose we want it, kind of depending on the size of your properties. So very tailorable.
Good question. All right. Any other questions from the audience? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it. Great questions. Really appreciate you spending some time with us to learn more about the hrPad solution and the value that it's driving for customers. If you'd like to explore how hrPad could work for your organization, we'd obviously be happy to set up a personalized session to dive deeper into your specific needs. You can reach out directly to us or visit the URL on the screen here. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to helping you modernize your time capture and employee self-service. And have a great rest of the day and week ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again, everyone.